looking for escapism, I just want to escape.
Welcome back to my disembodied voice. In today's video, I want to look at the main villain in the movie Run, Hide, Fight and, from a purely psychological perspective, discuss what the film got right in terms of the personality structure of someone who led a fanatical crew to live stream a school shooting, and what they got wrong. Now, this essay is about the narcissism associated with school spree shooters, character congruence, and what the film got right and wrong in terms of its portrayal of someone who slaughters their classmates. Now, before I start, let me just explain I'm not offering any political views on gun violence in America. I live in England, in the United Kingdom, and we have a very different culture to the United States in terms of our relationship with guns. We had a mass school shooting in 1996 in a place called Dunblane, where Thomas Hamilton killed 16 young children and a teacher with his legally owned guns, and it was a truly horrific day in our history. Since that atrocity, gun laws in the United Kingdom have changed significantly. So, as people who will watch this video will have very different views on gun culture, I want to be clear that we are focusing purely on the villain, Tristan Voy, and what I think the film got right and wrong. I don't normally review films here, but, for the record, I quite liked Run, Hide, Fight's opening half an hour or so, and I was really keen to see how this film would tackle such a controversial issue. I believe that no topic should be off limits in terms of film, and, despite being a horrific subject which is bound to cause controversy, I was hoping for something which offered a taut thriller, harrowing drama, or thought-provoking and sympathetic character study. However, upon watching the entirety of Run, Hide, Fight, I was disappointed that it resembled a poor 80s action movie and the emotional moments which should have had impact were lost. I understand the reaction to making a film like this, but as someone who's fascinated by the psychology of people who commit these acts, it's not always the case that the perpetrators are just bullied loners. Dave Cullen's book on Columbine is essential reading on school shootings, as he chronologises Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold's life, horrific mass murder, and everything that went round it with great context, facts, accounts, opinions, and revelations from all sides. There are many things to consider when making a movie like Run, Hide, Fight, which is the protocol for an active shooter scenario, including tone, the severity of the violence, the protagonist, the antagonist, who you centre on, and what perspective you approach the story from. Do you go for the antagonist gunman side, those locked in classrooms, or even the police who are trying to get in? Run, Hide, Fight centres on its protagonist Zoe Hull, played by Isabel May, who is getting over the death of her mother when, one day at school, a van crashes into the canteen and 4 shooters emerge and begin gunning down the students. Leader of this pack is main villain Tristan Voy, played by Eli Brown. Tristan wants to live stream the shooting and, in between monologuing and making a female teacher strip, he sends his minions to do various tasks whilst they build to the crescendo of their plan involving explosives, a mass confusion, and something, whatever. Tristan is the key here and the character I want to focus on because, regardless of the rest of the plot, a well-acted villain with a congruent philosophy, belief and attitude sells the movie. So let's look at Tristan, what makes him tick, how he came across, what worked, and what didn't. Tristan Voy is a malignant narcissist. We can gather this from multiple key points in the movie, starting from the moment he emerges from the van and begins prancing, monologuing, and gloating about being in control. We also see his temperament towards his possible male lover, who gets upset and shoots someone in devotion over his leader lover being disrespected. Added to that, we have the live stream where he wants his entire manifesto broadcast to the world, right the way through to the argument with Zoe, where she taunts him about no one will remember him, they're going to remember her instead. Now, malignant narcissism refers to a specific, less common manifestation of narcissistic personality disorder, and some experts consider this presentation of narcissism to be the most severe subtype. With its extreme mix of narcissism, antisocial behaviour, aggression, and sadism, malignant narcissism has 3 types of aggression, which are the following. Hostile aggression. This behaviour specifically aimed at injuring or destroying someone or something. Instrumental aggression. This is an aggressive act that relates to a specific goal, such as smashing a car window to steal something, or, in Tristan's case, shooting up a school. And finally, affective aggression. This refers to behaviour usually directed at a person or object that triggered an emotion. It may also be redirected if it isn't possible to target the actual source. So, Punching a wall instead of punching another person is an example of effective aggression, particularly where the action involves the desire to cause damage. Malignant narcissism also contains antisocial traits such as sadism, not always with sexual gratification, and this can include enjoyment in hurting others, enjoyment in watching others experience pain, spending time fantasizing about hurting people even if they don't actually go through with the act, the enjoyment of humiliating others, especially in public situations, and behaving in controlling or domineering ways. So, in short, malignant narcissism may have many common traits of narcissism, like a strong need for praise and to be elevated above others, but in addition displays vindictiveness, sadism, aggression, and paranoia. It also has traits with antisocial personality disorder and extreme levels of grandiosity. However, malignant narcissists are not all Machiavellian serial killers or complex geniuses. They can be stroppy, temperamental, and just petulant in nature. So let's look at what Run, Hide, Fight gets right in Tristan Voy's malignant narcissism first, and how this is executed quite well. Tristan is a preening, petulant, grandiose and sadistic individual who has convinced 3 other people to trust and follow him with a near cultish belief to the point of ruining their own lives. Tristan also believes he is important enough to have the right to kill people and put his myopic and selfish views on a live stream around the world, and to have his massacre remembered and immortalised across rolling news and social media. Tristan is garrulous and self-obsessed, and also a bit pathetic. His jokes and taunts are more schoolyard one-downsmanship, as he taunts those who used to tease him rather than exuding the coolness of a gang lord or hysterical insanity of someone like the Joker. Malignant narcissists are often awkward, tactless, abrasive and insensitive, and, right off the bat, Tristan is self-absorbed and even disregards his loyal soldiers who are killing on his behalf. Part of narcissism is not caring, and I don't mean about people dying. I mean about personal interactions, as all emotional exchanges mean nothing and everything is geared towards the narcissist's continuous domination and self-adoration within his phenomenal field. His infatuation with streaming his massacre is also both culturally and personally narcissistic. Historian Christopher Lasch told about our current civilization being a perfect place for bad hero worship, self-atomization, and how alienation is a hallmark of age. For Tristan, he revels in being the odd one out, the special one, and his need for validation and fame is both blatant and accurate for many who wish to go out in flames or write their name in history, regardless of the pain and misery caused to others. Most importantly is the blind following of his minions, as not only do they give him narcissistic supply, but they are charmed and manipulated enough to lay their lives on the line for Tristan, and, in terms of the literal definitions and outcomes malignant narcissists seek, it's an accurate portrayal of someone who needs to use others for their own self-gain. Also, as discussed in a previous video, narcissists have alloplastic defences, which means they are never at fault for anything they do, and it's the world who is provoking them. Tristan's motivations are consistent with this, and, much like real narcissists, he knows the differences between right and wrong, but simply doesn't care, as everything he does is about gaining attention and praise for himself. Tristan is a nasty, self-centered little so-and-so, and, flanked by his crew of adorning minions with his desire to stream a massacre which will ruin lives but make him famous for all time, the motivations and structural and functional domains of the narcissistic personality are all there. So why was I left unimpressed, nonplussed, and overall meh at Tristan as a villain, and, added to that, was he the reason why Run, Hide, Fight was a frustratingly bland film considering its truly shocking subject matter? This now brings me onto the things that the film got wrong, that were missing in Tristan's psychology, and what he lacked to make the scenes he was in what they should have been, truly terrifying and unforgettably memorable. Tristan is about to preside over the execution of a group of students and live out every fantasy of those who commit mass murder, to be the centre of attention and dominate the world's media. However, from the moment he walks around the van and appears to his classmates and the other teenagers in the school, there is a vacuum of charisma and expression. Whilst Tristan's goons all possess the dialogue and body language of yes men, awaiting their orders, awkward inside the dominance they are not used to showing, or just inferior copies of the orchestrator, Tristan himself should be merciless and the embodiment of the anger to action hypothesis. Let me explain. It is not proven if anger is diminished or accentuated by action, or if emotive action increases anger, and this gets even more complicated when it comes to narcissists, as they have no regulatory mechanism to control their anger. Narcissist expert Sam Vaknin stated that, when lashing out, narcissists dedicate all rage and anger to the here and now, and the most explosive actions are often caused by the most recent of events. Therefore, when confronting his first two quarries and turning the tides and dynamics of power and control, his control of calmness and the jocular tone is disjointed. Tristan stabs his first victim, then makes a quick quip before telling everyone else to be calm and then confronting someone who has apparently always called him a fag. Tristan's comrade then shoots this person, only for Tristan to become annoyed and state he was just messing and they need to focus. Now, narcissistic rage doesn't focus, it revels. In fact, as per psychology of anger, it interrupts rational thought processes and leads to full-hearted recklessness, which then releases pathological ire. Tristan first kills someone who charges at him calmly with a quip. Then, when his friend/lover shoots the powerless bully, he tells him to calm down. Straight away, there is an incongruence and juxtaposition that is supposed to show his controlling genius and calmness in the face of hysteria, but this means he doesn't come off as megalomaniacal here, and, watching as an audience, we are left switching between anger, jokes, callousness, and then an odd level of restraint. Had Tristan emerged from the van and killed someone straight away with no words or jokes, and it would have been even more powerful if it was a female or someone who offered no threat, before then confronting his bully and stating how wonderful it felt to have the power over them before shooting him repeatedly, time and time again, as so to destroy the object which once degraded his grandiosity. Imagine bullet after bullet to the face in retribution and triumph, while smiling and grimacing with the camera catching the bullet flashes in his eyes. Then we would have seen his explosive rage and known that nobody is safe, and we could have felt the true menace. For narcissists, after the explosive rage comes the pernicious rage, and this is where the sulky, stroppy and petulant behaviour comes in. The pernicious rage is more passive-aggressive and, rather than monologuing or giving instructions, it would have been far more scary if we'd have had no clear understanding of how anyone was going to survive or adapt to Tristan's carnage. Tristan is creating a live stream, which means this is his narcissistic supply. It's his method of continuous feedback and praise. He wants the world to watch and remember, so, after taking his revenge, the narcissist sulks at the emptiness of all of this before lashing out again and again, unpredictably, and projecting his rage at the object he hates. After killing the bully, Tristan tells his minion to slow down and calm down, and then tells everyone else there is a way they will survive this. It just doesn't fit. Now, I think one of the best scenes in the film is had between Zoe and one of Tristan's minions called Kip, where, after restraining and taking Kip's gun away, thus reducing him back to the loser he has always been, they engage in a conversation discussing why Kip is doing this. In contrast to Tristan's narcissism, Kip is an aimless loser who wants a purpose, some control, power and acceptance, and has joined this rampage under the hypnotic charm of his leader, and also the chance to take the revenge on the people who have done things to him, like pulling his pants down, quite literally, in front of the school one day. Whilst I feel this scene is breezed over too quickly, Kip is consistent in how he acts to his backstory, and thus, as Zoe says to him, he is just a nobody and completely forgettable. Meanwhile, for Tristan, who is possibly using two of his foot soldiers for little more than fun and sexual gratification, he moves through degrading an attractive teacher to more monologuing and incongruent behaviour, which leaves the audience ambivalent to his apparent unpredictability. For an antagonist willing to shoot up a school, convince 3 people to follow him blindly, and someone who seeks vanity, fame and revenge, Tristan is something of a damp squib. Even when getting the teacher to remove her clothes, what could have been a painfully tense and uncomfortable scene feels little more than an excuse to get a lady's breasts out. The malignant narcissist has a lot of anger aimed towards himself. It is the passive-aggressive and pernicious rage which, although remains projected at its target, is very introverted towards their own self-hatred. In the scene with the teacher, he forces her to undress slowly and uses this as both a form of perversion and more calmness in his control. However, had we seen the vacillation between his true self and his false self, i.e. the false self is this raging genius he thinks he is, whilst the true self is his more than likely failing grades and being repeatedly pulled up in front of the class, this teacher should have been a reminder of how ordinary Tristan is. So, as he forces her to strip, there should have been outbursts and executions of nearby students as he relives his mediocrity and shows off his newfound dominance. His dialogue should have been more aimed at reciting the injustices of her bad marks or overlooking of his genius, and the purpose of removing each layer of clothes is to save a student's life and flatter his delusional revenge fantasy. Tristan wants an ego-syntonic feeling and, looking at the students, bullies and teachers, all they do is create a chasm between his self-hatred, low self-esteem, false self and true self, and therefore the more he engages with people, the less monologuing he does and the more anger takes over as he tries to restore this ego syntony. For narcissists, sadistic and violent acts are their way of punishing people for not being docile or obedient, admiring or respectful of the genius which stands before them, and, for Tristan, he is too gregarious and sparing with his mercy to be a truly congruent villain. Run, Hide, Fight is a bit of a hit-and-miss film, and, whether it contains subtle political messages or not, after all, Thomas Jane saves his daughter by sniping from the background, so a good guy with a gun is stopping a bad guy with a gun. It's all incidental. You can choose to take a pro or anti-gun message from the film, or you can just enjoy a dumb action movie set around a catastrophic circumstance. Narcissism expert Sam Vaknin talked about spree shooters and discussed how most were loners, schizoid, paranoid, and have internal narratives which build frustration and self-admonishing fury. He discussed how they have no one to share their emotions with and, during attacks, they feel elated and ego-syntonic as they lash out at targets who cannot defend themselves. Run, Hide, Fight sets out a cartel of shooters, and I have no problem with that, as either love, shared psychosis, or just blind faith in a cult makes sense. However, I felt that Tristan came across as far too indifferent and undefined with irregular habits which didn't fit with the character of someone who would do this. The lack of opposing likeable characters and time with victims who are truly about to see their young lives cut short didn't help contrast his apparent evilness, but regardless of this, I applaud Run, Hide, Fight for having the balls to tackle a difficult subject in the first place, and, love it or hate it, debate and perspective is what makes film an engaging and absorbing experience. Gus Van Sant's film Elephant tackles the same subject of school shootings to an equally uneven outcome. Their film takes a day in the mundane lives of characters we got to know a lot better before being massacred, and that film's two killers were military and revenge-obsessed loners, but that film also missed the chance to have a truly nail-biting experience once the antagonists roll into view. Run, Hide, Fight certainly has higher production values and knows what it wants to aim its film at in terms of its tone and commercialisation, and I enjoyed parts of it, but I was left frustrated at the lacklustre villain and skimming over scenes which I felt should have had more impact. Anyway, that's it for now. Please subscribe if you want to see more, and until next time, I'll catch you later.
You're gonna remember me.